Test, test, test. There we go.
You always take it out.
Hopefully without breaking any.
So you're gonna have a career change, Chris?
What are you saying? Start looking?
Pretty good at that tape, you know? Thank you.
Test 1, 2. Can you hear me okay?
I won't adjust it too much. I'll just leave it. Trying to monkey with it.
Cody, can you hear me okay?
Good evening, everyone. It is approximately 5:30 p.m., and we will begin the July 8th City Council meeting, the City of Moorhead. Madam Clerk, can you please give us a roll call?
Shelley Dahlquist. Here. Sarah Watson-Curry. Here. Shelley Carlson.
Here.
Heidi Durand. Joel Paulson.
Here.
Deb White.
Here.
Steve Gertz.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
Mayor Judd.
Here. And if we all can please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. And moving on, I'll give the, the announcement that anyone that is wishing to speak this evening during the Citizens to be Heard portion of our meeting, please feel free to fill out the gold request to speak form prior to approaching that item on the agenda. Madam Clerk will take those, and then obviously, if you wish to be heard, please approach the podium, and we'll ask for your name and your address, and then we'll let you proceed. It should be noted that we do allow 3 minutes for individuals who wish to speak to address the council, and just to be aware, the ground rules are that it'll be your time to speak. And as far as the council is concerned, we're here to listen, and if there's any follow-up or feedback, we can do so either by email or by contacting the city manager to follow up on anything that we can't resolve here this evening. With that, moving forward, are there any agenda amendments?
Mr. Mayor, there is agenda item number 15 is being pulled from consent. That's it.
Okay, and that's the resolution to enter into agreement for financial support for Valley Water Rescue? Yes. Okay, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda? Second. A motion has been made by Councilmember Watson-Curry, seconded by Councilmember Hendrickson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Then we'll move to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. And is there any discussion needed before making a motion to approve? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion been made by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Paulson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 5, recognitions, presentations. Mr. Derek Lapointe for the Downtown Master Plan update.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on where we're at with the Downtown Master Plan. We did have our kickoff meeting with our consultant group. As you may recall, we hired Stantec as our primary consultant group. They also have sub-consultants of the Kilbourne Group, Land Elements, and Folkways. It's a great team. We're really excited. We've been working very closely with them over the last few months. And this was kind of the big kickoff meeting to really kind of get our ducks in a row and really kind of put together an engagement plan for what's to come with the plan itself. The kickoff meeting was on June 20th. Some of the items that we discussed were the project scope itself, just making sure everybody was on the same page. The project branding, we'll be incorporating the city's logo on all of our work as well as Downtown Moorhead Inc.'s. There'll be a website associated with the plan itself. We had a very strong focus on not trying to reinvent any social media platform or branding. Downtown Moorhead Inc. recently just launched our own website, which is www.dtmoorhead.org, which follows our domain from our email address. This project website will be dtmoorheadplan.org. That site is not live yet, but We've been getting feedback from staff and others to make sure we have the right content on there to make that active. We'll have links directly to the city's website as well as Downtown Moorhead Inc.'s website. So we'll be using those platforms as our resource to the plan itself, so the public can follow along to know what's happening. The public engagement plan, we kind of went through that, and I'll get into more detail after I get through this list. As you can imagine, there's a lot of data collection as a result of these startups. So working very closely with the city GIS department, the engineering department, planning department. Yeah, you bundle all the old plans, you take all the data that's available. Brad and the GIS department here has done a fantastic job in being very supportive and helpful in getting the information needed to our downtown consultants. We also discussed specifically the timeline of the plan, and some elements of that is the Woodlawn Point site, the former power plant site, and the RFP that would be associated with that. That has been identified as something that could be maybe moved up in our planning process, so we can get that RFP out early in the spring to maybe see a project or multiple project proposals come in before the construction season. You know, some of the items that we're looking forward in our current efforts of phase one is really assembling our base mapping. So that's taking all that existing information and really kind of getting the materials in place, summarizing existing plans and programs, making sure that we have an understanding of what is available and how we move forward. We'll go live with the website. We'll schedule our summer phase one pop-up events, which are basically, we'll be creating some business cards that have scanned codes on it, also links to our website, et cetera, that will start collecting survey data. Myself and Peggy Harder, the project lead from Stantec, will do 2 different pop-up events. One we'll try to isolate out on a nice hot summer day, maybe like today actually, but we'll go to the DQ parking lot right outside DQ and just try to get as many people as we possibly can to get brand awareness of the plan itself, but also get some specific data and questions answered. The other event that we're looking at is tapping into the Bridge Bash event on September 5th, trying to get to as many college students as we can on both sides of the river, quite frankly, but also the event draws a lot of family members, and I think that's a unique perspective to get. We'll also be looking at our existing transportation assessments and a parking inventory. We want to be, again, making sure we're dealing with accurate and current data, so we'll be doing some assessments there. There will also be an existing market assessment done with our current market environment. The Kilbourne Group will be doing that. And we'll also be preparing for a large public outreach event at the end of phase one, which will be, as of right now, we're looking at the week of September 9th. So we wanted to wait until school is back in session, but we're excited to get to our students, get to our residents, to really kind of make sure we're creating a plan that is tailored to our public and really something that the public can be proud of. Now, kind of getting into our public engagement plan, I really just have to thank Stantec. That I think they've done an excellent job with laying out our plan scope itself, as well as this public engagement plan. There are still some items that you've probably saw in your packet that we have highlighted in yellow that we're working through, making sure that we get the right pieces in place. But some of the things I want to hit on is really the public engagement goals. Some of them I'll just kind of read here, but engage in a meaningful and relevant dialogue, prioritize inclusive representation, provide access to information and opportunities, make sure contributors have an impact, and create an empowering experience. So we really want to not have a situation where we're just telling the public this is what we're going to do, but really creating an open forum to engage the public and get their feedback on what we want to become. You'll notice in the plan itself too that we have a lot of different audiences that we're trying to get to. So we have the general public, certainly the residents of our community, but also specific to our downtown. So we're trying to isolate some of those individuals out that really want to be in depth with the plan. We have property owners, small business owners, college students, higher ed institutions or public institutions, cultural organizations, accessibility population, tourist visitors, developers, and then boards and commissions from a variety of different natures. We are led and kind of guided by a technical advisory committee that's listed in your forum. There's a few other names that'll probably be added to this list, but myself, Dave Anderson, who's my board chair from DMI, Christy Lashevsky, Chris Volkers, Dan Molly, Bob Zimmerman, Jonathan Atkins, Kim Kotrowski, Michael Burns from my board, who is also part of the selection committee for the consultant group, as well as Sherry Larson with the MBA, who would be a good guide from the business community. Will make up of that technical committee. You know, there's different phases here. I won't get into the details, but really we have a strategy, we have a plan. There's a process to making sure we get the right information to draw out a plan. I think the phases really reflect that and how we're gonna move forward. But some of the outreach techniques are important, I think, to touch on here today. We certainly will have one-on-one interviews. We'll be working with businesses, property owners, developers, residents, et cetera. But we're also going to have some listening sessions, some groups that will be identified in a small group fashion to really make sure that we're on the right track. You'll notice that in your packet you had a couple areas highlighted in yellow, but we have kind of identified 8 different groups that we'll work closely with. We're still identifying individuals that would be a part of it. So the public that's listening, as well as the council, if you have any ideas of members or individuals that we should include in these groups, please let me know. But we have a group for developers, residents, businesses, the Moorhead Center Mall, education, kind of a bike and pedestrian group, a commercial banking or lending group, an arts, design, and cultural group as well. We've also talked about adding the diversity group too, that we're inclusive to those that are maybe sometimes less heard. You know, I think the last thing I'll touch on, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, is really the timeline of this. You'll see here where phase 1 really started in July of this year. It'll go into September. In phase 2, we have the plan framework, which will go from October to January 2020. Phase 3 is our investment and redevelopment strategies that will go from February and March in 2020. And lastly is phase 4, delivering the tools, which will be April, May, and June of 2020. So we hope to have a completed plan by the end of June of 2020. Again, there's a process for this. There'll be definitely steps involved to inform and get guidance from our council members as well as the community. But I'm happy to kind of continue to report back to you on a monthly basis or when I have the opportunities to come and speak. But I'm extremely excited. I'm very thankful to the group that we've selected. I think they've done an excellent job, like I said, and we're excited to get out to the public to really start pooling what this vision will be for downtown and setting a work plan for us for the future. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. LaPointe? Councilmember White.
Derek, thanks for coming in. I'm just, as you know, I'm really excited about this plan. I was glad to hear you mention Bridge Bash. I think that's a great way to reach out to students. And I love all of the very detailed way that they're working together, community input. On page, let's see, page 9, I know you have highlighted in there looking at other, identifying other TAC or technical advisory committee members. Would it be helpful to have one council member? I was just thinking there's several of us on council have spent a lot of time talking to people and might be good liaisons to, connect the committee with other residents who could share their thoughts on going ahead with plans for the downtown.
Yeah, no, thank you for your comment. I think we certainly could. My hope, though, is that we'll be engaging the council enough where we don't necessarily need just one individual on that. I feel like that's going to be a group that's put to work pretty heavily throughout this process, so we can certainly talk further on it if somebody is interested on being a part of this technical advisory committee. But my hope is that I'd be continuing to engage yourselves as well as you continue to give me feedback as you hear it. So we're not missing anything as well. But I think we're open to that idea as well.
Any other questions or comments? The only question I have, Derek, for you is, I noticed on here certain groups, and the only question I would have is that, is there any potential outreach to the elderly or people that might have a limited access to come through downtown, for example, making any contact with River Point, Eventide, Farmstead Living?
Yeah, a lot of those groups are actually identified within some of our focus groups already. Now, I'll say not every, we can't probably have, 12 different focus groups. We have to have some type of focus on it. But just because we have some of those listed doesn't mean we're going to stop at not going out and continue to talk to those selective groups. So my hope is, and really what I think gives us a unique advantage of this plan is we have a contract and very kind of rigid scope with Stantec. That really is defining of our project budget. Now, we're going to have a pretty good idea of what's going to be asked as far as question-wise. We'll have the materials already prepared for it. My hope is that myself, being with Downtown Moorhead Inc., can take that and continue it probably with more groups without maybe having Stantec there in a capacity that would cost money to the plan itself. So that's my hope, is that we can continue to get out to folks in a more individual manner rather than having all these groups that are isolated out within the plan itself.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does that present any questions or comments for Derek? Councilmember Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Derek, I'm assuming through all this, we're going to be dealing with some different policy ramifications. And I like this approach of engaging the boards and commissions in that. Is your view that the boards and commissions would be struggling or discussing some of these policy implications along with the development of this plan? Or is that something that's going to occur prior to or after the plan is already in place?
I think certainly we want to engage them and make them aware of maybe some of the stuff we're hearing from the public. My hope would be, if it's serious enough where we have to address it right away, that we have some guidance to do that. I hope that we have good, thorough discussions, but the ultimate goal at the end of the plan is that there would be some guidance as to what to maybe do in that situation. Now, it's not going to be the end-all, be-all, or the only answer, so I think that dialogue has to continue. But hopefully just identifying these issues and challenges and bringing about discussion at those board levels are going to be well needed, and I think well appreciated by our public. I think that we're all here to serve our businesses and residents, so making sure that we have the adequate information and the good dialogue is always key.
Madam City Manager.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Paulson, Derek's right. I think the very short answer is after all of that, there will be a concentrated effort to make any changes that we believe or heard from needs to be done after. Probably not as we go through it, right, Derek?
Well, and like I said, unless there's something that becomes a priority
Very
or
obvious.
becomes
Yep.
very obvious that needs to be fixed. I think that's, I wouldn't rule out that we're just going to wait until it's all done. But as we all know in government, things take time anyways. So by the time we identify something and we start looking at solutions, I think we'll probably be nearing the end of the completion of the plan itself. But the hope would be, not the hope, I mean, the reality is at the end of this plan, we will have some documentation in our plan. Typically at the end, that would be an implementation strategy. We would have certain goals and objectives based on the outcomes or the challenges that we've determined in our plan. We'd have a lead as far as who would be the one that would be out there solving that, whether that's, myself, council, Moorhead Business Association, River Keepers, you name it. I mean, all sorts of different groups I think have to be at the table with this. But it sets that priority of maybe it's immediate, maybe it's 1 to 5 years out, maybe it's 10 years out. But having that guidance of what to expect and setting our work plan is certainly, I think, appreciated by the public too. But it also gives guidance as you as council members of here are some things that we definitely need to prioritize now or in the future.
Thank you, Derek. Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate
More to
it.
come.
Oh, yes. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 6, the approval of the minutes from the June 24th, 2019 council meeting. Everyone's had a chance to review.
Move approval. Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Gert, seconded by Councilmember Paulson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Citizens to address the council. Agenda item number 7. Are there any individuals here to address the council this evening? Seeing none, we'll move to, it doesn't have an asterisk, but mayor and council appointments. I think we're good on that. No worries. All right. So we move on to our public hearing, agenda item number 9. This is a public hearing regarding the request of Matt Lackowitzer. Did I pronounce that correctly, Mr. LaPointe?
Lockwitzer.
Lockwitzer, on behalf of Lockwitzer Investments LLC for Renaissance Zone project located at 1234 First Avenue North. Is there a motion to move into public hearing? A motion made by Councilmember Paulson. I'll give it to Councilmember Hendrickson. All in favor of said motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are now in public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As stated here, this is a Renaissance Zone application request. Matt is in attendance here for any questions or any details specific to the project. So I'll kind of go through my breakdown, and I'll ask Matt to come up to kind of give anything I've missed and for questions to be answered. This is the project itself. For a little bit of the history, we had Matt's building on First Avenue North, due to the increase in snow this past winter, had a collapse, a roof collapse. It was damaged significantly enough that the building was deemed not occupiable, 100% lost by insurance. We've been working with Matt for a number of months now. We reached out right away just to make sure if there's anything we could do to help. At that point in time, there was still some question as what Matt would do on the property itself, whether he would rebuild or kind of just working through the insurance aspect of it. With that, we continued to have conversations, and it came about that there would be a new project planned on the site itself. The plans are to demolish all or maybe a little bit of parking left over, but the whole building would be demolished, as well as the majority of the parking around the site itself, the existing site. The plan would be to rebuild, construct a new auto service center, expanding the number of service bays on site, adding a customer lounge, an office, an employee break room, and a training space to host community classes on the second story of the facility. The building is situated towards First Avenue, and the owner's been working with an architect, to kind of create some design elements that are interesting and unique to the surrounding area. The building itself has a ground floor of about 7,900 square feet. The second floor is about 1,700 square feet, so we're a little under 10,000 square feet. Per the Renaissance Zone policy, we looked at some of the goals and objectives that were associated by this new project. Some of them that were identified were the activity generator. Matt's done great business in our downtown for a number of years and expanded his business footprint throughout the community. This is certainly an infill project with an unforeseen circumstance of the roof collapse. We view this area as a downtown entryway into our community. Based on the project cost, there's about an estimated $1.2 million in project costs. Based on the cost per square foot and the square foot of that building footprint, we're looking at a cost value of $125 a square foot. That would equate with our policy to be an exemption of 10 years. Again, on how the Renaissance Zone works is the same like our other tax incentives, is that the existing value is still taxable. If demolished, that building value would go to zero, or whatever would remain. That's not uncommon to what we do in our commercial and industrial property tax incentive period. In this case, since the building was deemed at a loss from an insurance standpoint, that value has already been dropped by our local assessment department. That is something that is a reasonable request that comes in from time to time. And then going into our Renaissance zone thresholds, the first 5 years, years 1 through 5 would be 100% exempt. Years 6 through 10 would be 75% exempt. The timeline of the project, if approved tonight, would begin still this month. The hope would be July of 2019, with an estimated completion of March 2020. This project does meet our local zoning district with MU3, Commercial Mixed Use District, which allows for a mix of commercial and residential uses. There are certain building material requirements that we've noted here in the council communications, as well as a minimum 30% building material requirement, which in this case the applicant does meet. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. I will call Matt up here to get any other things that I've missed as a part of this application. I think it's unique with the training classes that Matt's looking at adding, so I'll let him get into some of those details as well. Thank you.
Hi, we do multiple different community events, actually hold them at our Fargo location now. Purpose of the second level is to allow that to come into the Moorhead side and really have a unique training opportunity. So we do a ton of women's events. We average about 80 women at our women's car care events. We also do teen and men's ones. We average about 40 to 50 at those. Really been a big thing. They're absolutely free, and they're really meant to empower people to learn more about their vehicles. It's been a huge success. We've done 17 or 18 of them now, and they've been awesome. And I wanted to have a space that was not in the middle of the shop where we could do these classes, and that was the whole intent for that second level. So.
Councilmember Dahlquist?
Hi, thank you. I just have 2 questions. How many employees do you have, and are you going to have enough room for the parking? I know previously there was some parking and that you used the bottle shop too. Did you have some kind of agreement with them?
Yeah, so we average about 8 employees at that location. I don't anticipate that'll change a whole lot. It might be up or down 1 or 2, but it'll be about the same. As regards to parking, we've never really had an issue with employee parking or anything like that. It's been when we get busy times of year. With the building shifting all the way to the west, it actually opens the lot up a little bit better. And then also I own the houses that are on both sides of that as well. So we've actually, it doesn't show this in the pictures, but we've actually expanded the parking lot and taken some of the other properties. So I think we meet the code for parking, I know that, so.
And that's just what I would like to add, is that it does meet code for the parking requirements in this zoning district.
Councilmember Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very intrigued by the educational classes, particularly since they're free, and I think that is fascinating. If you could just give us a little more insight about what are the classes that you actually have. And then my second question, I'm looking at the pictures, and it looks like there will be a fence around the back.
Yeah, so on what side are you looking at for the fence? The northwest?
The north side.
Okay, so on the north side, there is a fence that, kind of where they found what pictures you have, but along the parking from the building to the southeast section, there'll be a fence similar to what Bottle Shop has. There'll be kind of just a metal black fence. I know we had some
On the
issues.
south side?
I'll be on the south side, yeah. I know that we've had some issues with parking there and then blocking the sidewalk and stuff like that. Can't control people park, unfortunately, but, so I know that was one of the things we talked about when we met with some of the city officials when we were going over that. In regards to my classes, so they're about a 4-hour seminar. We get the gals one or whatever, we get them out under the vehicle, we show them tires, how to check their fluids, things how to build a relationship with the service center, things to look for, things they can do on their own. I mean, they're really meant to empower people. So the first thing I actually say when we start the class, this has nothing to do with us. If you have a question specific to us, call us next week. It has nothing to do with Matt's Automotive. It's really about educating and empowering people. The teen one is more about getting them familiar with the lights under on their dash, how to check their tire pressure, how to check their tires, what noises to look for, so they can really communicate with the service center, because they're building a relationship for the first time. So, and then the men's one, we kind of, it's a spin-off of the women's one. We had too many men complaining they didn't have their own class, and that's where that kind of came from. So we've also been toying with the idea of doing a couples one. So it's kind of taken its own animal and turned, it's, like I said, our first one had 18 people. Now we're averaging, we have to cut it at 80 because that's as much as people we can handle. So it takes about 14 of our staff to put one of these on, so.
Councilmember White, then we'll go to Hendrickson.
Just a couple of additional things. One is, I think you've done a great job of putting together something that blends in well with the older neighborhood, but has a nice kind of unique modern feel to it as well. And, that's an area where, as we're looking at a lot of the growth that's happening in Moorhead, there's a lot of new things going in there, and I think it will really add to that. And the other, I also am pleased that you've done some things to address some of the concerns that were raised by neighbors about sidewalk. I love the classes. I think it just shows what a good community partner you are. And the other thing that I'll point out too is you've done a great job of renovating the space that you have on Center Ave. So, I know you've acquired that space and have just done a lot of work investing in that property as well. And so it's nice to have you as part of Moorhead.
Thank you. I own 8 businesses, and they're all Minnesota companies, so that's one of the reasons we purchased that building, is we're gonna stay there and not occupy it with another business, so.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Matt, for investing in Moorhead. Really appreciate that aspect. Question for that center, I know it's a temporary space right now, but what's going to happen to that? Because I'm pretty sure you own that, correct?
I do, yes.
What's going to happen to that?
So one of my other businesses that's really taken off over the last 3 years, I own a promotional products business as well, and that's gonna occupy that space. So I own a screen printing machine, an embroidery machine, all that kind of stuff. That's gonna be located in that building. Then we'll use a showroom for when we do customer presentations, things like that, so. So that's what we're gonna be doing with that. With some of our companies that we work with are Gate City Bank. We do everything that says Gate City Bank on, we make. So, I mean, it's a bigger business than people even realize that, what we do there. But started this company as a result of having a bad interaction with the promotional products business. We ordered a bunch of stuff, showed up all screwed up. I'm there's gotta be a better way, so we started the business, and it's just kind of taken off over the last 3 years. But that's what's gonna occupy the space there. And then it will be the corporate headquarters for all Matt's automotive locations as well, which we have 5 currently, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gertz.
Matt, thanks for your investment in Moorhead. I know initially when you first opened there, you had some issues that I'm glad the city was able to work through with you. And, a lot of times business people like you, maybe get, the first thought is when you do these classes, it's for personal gain, but it's evident that you do it for a community outreach, and appreciate that investment in our community to give back. So thanks for your commitment to Moorhead.
Thank you.
Oh, Councilmember Paulson.
Yeah, thanks for coming in tonight, Matt. This is an impressive building, and I'll just reiterate what Councilmember White had mentioned. And I think this is a great example of being able to do a downtown project that doesn't look like a typical function of that facility. It doesn't look like a car shop. I mean, this looks like a beautiful building, and it's certainly going to complement the other projects that happen adjacent to you and in our downtown. And I think this is just a good example of how we can make a gas station or a car service center or something that would normally not look like it fits into the neighborhood, fit in beautifully. So thank you for taking that extra time and investment in Moorhead to do that.
When we met with the architects, that was very adamant that we did not want this to look like a shop at all. As you can see, I think from any angle, you can only see one door. Mm-hmm. And we really wanted it to be a different feel, different aspects. So me and my wife had actually driven in Detroit Lakes, and I don't know if anybody's seen lakeshirt.com's building.
Oh, sure.
It's absolutely incredible, and I liked the different architectural in there, and I said, this is what I want, but I love orange and it has to have orange on there. So that was kind of what I was after. So this building is going to have a little bit in your face with the orange, but I really think that it's going to really look nice on the street there. So,
Yeah, I think it looks great. Thank you.
yep.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. LaPointe?
Yeah, I'll just, I'll mention here too, just for the council's reference as well. I mean, I had a call that, this is on the floor of our 10-year investment threshold. Just from a city protection standpoint, from a fiscally responsible standpoint, we do have an open book kind of record. So, Matt and I have been communicating, the architect's been communicating as well. There isn't just a, hey, this is what I'm doing, granted. There's checks and balances in place to make sure what's being built is built, and there's an understanding and a fair understanding between us that that's the expectation. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of that, even though that this is on the threshold, that there are checks and balances in place to make sure that we have financial protection from the city standpoint.
Thank you for sharing.
I'd like to see too, I don't know if anybody was in the old building before it fell down, but I mean, I do put in high-end finishes. There was granite, reclaimed wood, stone, like high expensive tile floors. Like, we don't cut corners. Same thing with the shop atmosphere. It's going to be air conditioned. It's going to have a service driver. Nobody has to get out of their car in the elements. So that's when you come in from the east, or coming to the west, that garage door, it's facing the east actually as a service drive. So you actually get in, drive through there just like you're going to a dealership. So it's going to have a completely different, it has a coffee bar, it has a whole shoot and match. So I think we have 5 televisions in there. I mean, it's a big, it's not an automotive shop. And that's really what we were after. So if you go into any of my stores, that's the feel you get. We really invest in our showrooms and the customer's experience. And that's where a lot of this money goes. It's not the shop. It's actually what the customer experiences. So.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm really excited. I think the building looks great. I think your innovative approach to business and customer service is excellent. So thank you very much for your investment in our city and in the state of Minnesota. Appreciate it. Thank you. Seeing for the comments, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak or be heard on this public hearing? I'll ask again, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard regarding this public hearing? Hearing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing? Moved by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Then we'll move to 9A, which is a resolution to approve a Renaissance Zone property tax exemption for Lockowitzer Investments LLC for a commercial project located at 1234 First Avenue North. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Second.
Motion moved by Councilmember Gert, seconded by Councilmember White. All in favor of said motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Congratulations and thank you. We move to agenda item number 10, which is the Economic Development Report by It's Your Show Again, Mr. LaPointe.
Yeah, I'm just going to stay up here all night, so how late you want to go tonight? Just a few highlights here. Since I was kind of given a update on the downtown plan, there's a few things that have really stood out over the last few months, and one of them being we've taken a priority of meeting with our commercial and business banking teams, as well as the executive teams of some of our regional banking institutions. I think it kind of goes back to the last time I presented to the group of that we need to continue to tell our story. There's still too many folks out there that don't know what we have available from a policy standpoint or just from a quality of life standpoint here in our community. So having those conversations, on just one avenue of the banking industry has paid off big dividends, but we're hoping to continue to get out to more. So far, just over the last probably 6-7 weeks, I've met with several different organizations in town that have resulted in probably about 6 different properties that have closed or projects that'll come down the pipeline just from those initial conversations. And as I stated before, it's really educating them on what programs and policies we have available, but not forcing them to learn it like the back of their hand, just knowing that they can call me at any point in time, or their clients can call me at any point in time to make sure we get them the proper information. I want to thank Mayor Judd. He joined me on the radio show last month. I thought that was a fantastic feature, and we're able to continue to promote Moorhead. I was able to attend the State of Manufacturing in Alexandria, where we had good conversations with our state partners. We are extremely excited to kind of look at a couple different upcoming events with the Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC, and as well as some other community events that are going on. One of them being TEDx with Emerging Prairie. There's the annual meeting for the Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC. There's also a forum, an open forum for our opportunity zones, our federal incentive program. Emerging Prairie, as well as the Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC, are the ones that are hosting that for a workshop with individual businesses within our community on what an opportunity zone is, and going through a case-by-case project to make sure that our local business community understands it and can use it effectively. Emerging Prairie has reached out and asked me to MC the event, so as long as there is no child born that week, I will be emceeing the event, which is just a token to our regional partners that really are wanting a voice for Moorhead at these regional events, which I think is a fantastic thing. Dan Molly and myself, as well as some community partners, are looking into a deed grant. This would kind of look at, DEED put out a request for proposals that are due July 18th for supporting kind of entrepreneurial efforts within our community. It was a little bit disappointing, and I'd like to just kind of share that today a little bit, that as soon as that grant opportunity came available, we got the email. About an hour later, we had Emerging Prairie, Greg Tavine had reached out to Dan Molly and myself, wanting to be the group that could help us get this grant to support the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Moorhead. We were beyond thrilled that they approached us right away. We started looking into it, ultimately had some conversations with our state partners that really said that the organizations that are leading these grant efforts should be based in Minnesota only. I tried to reason that, we're sick of complaining about the border. This is an opportunity that we can celebrate the 250,000 people within our region here that can really be an accelerator to our community, as well as the rest of the region. Certainly you can almost throw a stone and hit Emerging Prairie's building over there, so there's no reason to create a new organization that would compete with them and or complement them in a way. I think they have the resources available to do it on both sides. I was a little bit disappointed with that, and we're continuing to work with the state to figure that out, because it's a partnership that we certainly want to take advantage of and utilize. But with that brought new opportunity. We were working with Scott Meyer with NDSU and Tri-Colleges, and ultimately stumbled upon an opportunity with MSUM and some of the members there of looking at women in business and women in an entrepreneurial setting. So we're looking at having MSUM lead that grant process with the city, Emerging Prairie, EDA, as well as Downtown Moorhead Inc. and MBA that would be supporters of that grant application that would ultimately establish a program to help women starting up businesses in our community. I think it's a fantastic thing. I think it just shows that we got a community that's eager and hungry for more. We just got to make sure that we hold our state partners accountable to it, that we can be something different here. And we're not just a small rural town up in the northwest of Minnesota. But I'm excited for it, and I think we'll continue to kind of push the envelope with it. There's a lot of great things happening in our community right now, whether it's businesses that are looking and exploring different spaces in our community, whether it's downtown or elsewhere throughout the city. We'll continue to drive that energy and get the right tools in place to really make businesses successful in our region. It goes to show when you have council as well as other city leaders that that have your back. I think that unified approach that we've had over the last year and a half has really done wonders for our reputation, as well as building trust in the development community. And look forward to that continuation of energy and seeing some projects come down the pipeline. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Derek, I would encourage you to reach out to our state representatives to discuss that issue. You know, I think it's something that we do struggle with here. I think Emerging Prairie does amazing work in our area, and it's exactly what we need to bring into our downtown. And we need to bring that young entrepreneurial spirit, and that's what they have. And you're exactly right. They're the group to do it. I do like the alternative that you mentioned. I think that's a great effort as well. But just telling our story and making sure that St. Paul understands the dynamics that are at play in Fargo and Moorhead. I think the more we can push that story, the better.
Well, and I think that, the frustrating part that I had, and I expressed it to the state representative that was with DEED, and I will be talking to the director of DEED. He was the president of the Greater Fargo Moorhead Economic Development Corporation, which we all know as and value as a partner here. But even in their situation, the impression I got was the state wouldn't honor that partnership if the EDC wanted to put forward an application in their own right. And that's troubling. That's difficult to understand in a regional approach that we have. So as a director of DEED right now, who comes from that organization, who understands our situation, I hope they have a better understanding of what we do up here, as well as how we operate too.
Any other questions or comments for Derek?
I have one thing that I forgot to mention too, Mr. Mayor, that is really important, is that we did have an approval of our West Central Community Planning Grant. That, as you may recall, we are looking to submit a grant that would help with our business retention and expansion software program. That's, again, a partnership with our EDC. I was just blown away. Within 2 days of submitting that application, we had approval from West Central. Just goes to show you that, again, that people are believing in us and wanting to be a part of what we're trying to do. That tool is still kind of working out. We have some training that will be forthcoming here, but we're excited to utilize that software program. So again, we collect the right data, we get the right information, so we can start making proper decisions for our business community.
Well, thank you for your work on that, as well as all that you do. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. LaPointe? And I'll probably hit on this in my report, but I want people to know that there's nothing wrong, and it takes a team effort for us to promote ourselves, and it's okay to do that. I know we are a community of humility, but also at some point in time we do have to kind of put it out there where we're at and what we're trying to do. So thank you for doing that, Mr. LaPointe.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay. No questions or concerns. We will move on to item number, well, I have 11. Is that off? That is off. That is not a consent item, correct?
That's right, Mr. Mayor. Number 11 is next.
I just want to make sure because I didn't see an asterisk.
Are you
think it's a
tired-
Derek
are you tired
show
of my
again.
voice or what?
Right.
Well, you were leading into that, so.
Yeah, I'll just get into it. This is, I'll be brief with it, but I think it was important to highlight some of the changes that we have to what was formerly called the facade loan program. Some of you may recall this was put in place a number of years back, but really to enhance our storefronts, our facades in our urban progress zone. It was the former boundary of our, what is now called the Renaissance zone. It's a little bit different, but the boundary is similar. We've had this program established for a number of years with no applicants. People have explored it. What we were finding was the amount of paperwork that was needed for this particular program was exhaustive. Thanks to Assistant City Manager Dan Molly, who created Fargo's storefront rehab program, we were able to have a really trained and experienced eye in what this program could look like and how it could be effectively utilized for our businesses in downtown. We've kind of done a couple different things. One, obviously, is the name change. We wanted some brand recognitions, kind of like what we did with the Moorhead Renaissance Zone program, and really complementing policies from a Fargo, West Fargo standpoint. We looked at really calling this Moorhead Storefront Rehab Program, because we're really moving away from a traditional loan standpoint to a forgivable deferred loan, which is, in a sense, a grant. We didn't really want to put that the word loan in there. We wanted some name brand recognition. So what you'll see is obviously the name change itself. We have a boundary, which would be the Moorhead Renaissance Zone, but I will note that we'll have a waiver language put in place that is similar to our other two incentive programs. For example, we have already had an inquiry from the Tasty Freeze, which is not inside our Renaissance Zone border, but certainly would be one that we could consider for this facade loan program or the storefront rehab program if they choose to. So we want to have that flexibility to look at other kind of areas. The loan or the grant itself would be up to $25,000 per storefront and would require a 50% match. So we want to see dollars be put into the project itself, that this isn't just totally being funded and subsidized by the city. So there is a 50% match. And again, it would be a 0% interest deferred forgivable loan after the business has been established for a period of 5 years. This is very similar to a program that West Fargo has done recently for some of their businesses, is creating a forgivable loan program or a grant program with that kind of period of 5 years. They want to make sure somebody is coming in and being around for a number of years. The reality is, if somebody were to sell at year 6, we have an improved building that becomes more desirable and more usable for the future. So it's an exciting program that we hope to effectively use. For those that don't, maybe understand the detail of how this program is operating, Moorhead has a significant amount of dollars that are managed by the West Central Initiative. They are the ones that manage our Moorhead Loan Fund that has about $900,000 in that fund that have been used for traditionally gap financing, but it can be used for other programs. What we would be looking to do is requesting a designation of funds within the Moorhead Loan Fund of an amount of $200,000 that would be dedicated towards this storefront rehab program. Back in 2016, there was an amount of $250,000 set aside for the facade loan program. As we all know, that fund hadn't changed in a number of years. So we're looking at capping that at $200,000 to make sure that we see projects happen. We can always expand that if necessary, but we want to be fiscally responsible with the amount of dollars that we have as a holistic standpoint to our Moorhead Loan Fund, and make sure that we're serving some of the other programs that are a part of that. Really, we've already gotten requests, and we've already gotten some people that are interested in coming in and having an application for our storefront rehab program. One other thing that was very glaring from a process standpoint with the old facade loan program was it had a variety of different steps for approval. There was the EDA, there was a subcommittee of the EDA that was the Moorhead Loan Fund Committee. There was a subcommittee of that, which was the Moorhead Design Committee. Really, we felt we just need one stop. We need a place where we can be flexible and efficient, especially since we have recommendations from the West Central Board. The board provides a recommendation if this is something that is, again, fiscally responsible for the city or the Moorhead Loan Fund to support. So we would be removing the Moorhead Design Committee. We would be utilizing the Moorhead Loan Committee as the point for approval at the city standpoint. and then ultimately West Central will provide a recommendation as well. So with that, we are excited about it. We think it will be a great tool. Truthfully, we're still working out some of the details. We're working with West Central because this has to ultimately meet their board and governance requirements. So as of right now, we haven't had any comments or concerns with it. They think it fits within the idea and the goals of our Moorhead Loan Fund. So we're excited to launch this, and this will be another thing to promote on behalf of the city, and really see some projects that'll be put forward and utilized. So with that, we'd be seeking your support in the changes, as well as any feedback or comments you may have that could make this program more effective as well.
Thank you again for your presentation, Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Derek, I was just wondering, how many pages did it go from, was it like 18, 19 pages down to one?
It was a lot, yeah.
Okay.
We wanted just a clear, simple, one-page handout that we could give to our community, right? And then we found that in the application itself, a lot of it we didn't need. It was all application requirements through West Central, but we just said, hey, what do you truthfully need, and what are you just requesting as a part of the process itself? So that's where we're able to consolidate that front and back page application.
Good, congratulations. I wouldn't want to fill out 17 pages and go through the steps. I just encourage the businesses in the Renaissance Zone and around the Renaissance Zone with that flexibility to apply for this storefront. I think it's a great program, and I look for continued growth in it. So thanks. Thanks for your hard work there.
Thank you.
Council Member, you're pointing, Carlson. You were pointing
Yeah.
over here, that's why I got thrown off.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Thank
No
you.
worries, no worries.
Okay, so 3 questions, Derek. How is this different than community block development grant funds where it's for blighted storefronts versus this one?
So this does not use any federal dollars at all. So that is one of the big differences between Moorhead's, I'll say, new storefront rehab program based on Fargo's storefront rehab program that Mr. Molly created. That is a federal program where there's dollars from CDBG. This one will be Moorhead's money through the Moorhead's Loan Fund. I think there's opportunities to explore it. We just don't have the same resources and funding levels available from the federal CDBG level to support a grant like this. But it's certainly something that we'll continue to explore to see if there's opportunities.
So with the fact that we don't necessarily have all the federal issues tied to our funding, can you talk a little bit about, because when I hear the word facade, I think just front only. So is facade front only, or is it you tear back the front and there's faulty wiring, so the wiring could be done throughout, or they have bad windows, so is it windows throughout the whole entire building, or what would that involve?
Well, yeah, so we do have a definition, obviously in the one pager that you'll see here, of the use of funds. So we are looking at exterior renovations such as signs, exterior doors, windows, awnings, exterior graphics, exterior lighting, other facade and landscape improvements. Also would be looked upon for building code violations such as roofing, structural repair, necessary mechanical system upgrades are eligible, but only as a part of the approved facade improvement. So I would say for those that have larger scale issues, more than likely they will be qualified for our Moorhead Renaissance Zone program. They will hit that threshold from a property tax standpoint. This grant, no different than what it's utilized in Fargo right now, could be an additional assistance on top of the Renaissance Zone. We know there's certain levels of improvements that need to be done to the building itself, but if there's certain enhancements that are restricted due to their budgetary constraints, we certainly want to make sure that we have a program available to help them. We all know it's a struggle with the older buildings, specifically some of the facades and some of the signage that you are faced, whether it's restrictions from Minnesota DOT, other avenues that are in downtown from a facade standpoint. I mean, just look at the 814 Center Avenue right now. I mean, that was extensive work with the windows, the roof that have been dilapidated for a long time. So the hope is that this tool won't be the only avenue or source of assistance that we can provide to make sure we get a quality project.
Okay. Thank you for that, for clarifying. And also, my last question was about the funding. When the 250,000, I think, is that the
Facade loan
the
program?
proposed amount, is that a fund that continually gets replenished then, or when it's gone, it's gone?
Well, in this case, it would be when it's gone, it's gone. So if we go the forgivable route, so, you know, traditionally in that Moorhead loan fund, there is a payment back, so we're not losing funds. But this would be dedicated funds if they are, again, there for 5 years. We would cut into that amount. Again, I think from having a lot of conversations with the Moorhead Loan Fund Committee, EDA, some of the city leadership as well, we felt that this is a quality investment for funds that have been sitting in that account for a long, long time that really haven't been utilized. So we felt that that was a quality use of putting a cap on it. One, making sure that there is a safeguard there. We can always reevaluate and see if that's the proper amount, or, but we felt that that $200,000 allocated to the program is something that would be appropriate as well as useful. But we could certainly, I mean, there's certain other avenues of funds as well that could go back towards it if we felt that we needed to fund that. Certainly the EDA budget and the tax levy that's there, or other avenues we could certainly look at too. And I'd defer to City Manager Volkers on that as well.
Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thanks, Derek. The one question I have is, why do you see that we need to make it primarily Renaissance? Because, you know, like you said, the Tasty Freeze, because I was thinking there's some of those other stores over there that are, you know, in need. And then you're talking about farther down, you know, does it need to have that primarily, or can you?
I think
for everyone.
Yeah, I appreciate your question. I think it's a couple different reasons why we had it. One, I think we wanted to define a boundary of some sort to start this program. Instead of creating a new defined boundary, we had the existing one of the Renaissance zone. That we felt that that was an appropriate area, especially when we're encompassing the majority of the older facades that are in our community. Not all, right, but the majority of them. We talked about going citywide, but we didn't know if that would give us the most bang for our buck, if I can use that analogy in this case. But certainly there are areas that we can consider, just like we had talked about at one point in time with our commercial industrial property tax incentive of isolating areas out like the East 10 area, or down A Street to the 94 and A Street intersection. So I think this is a starting point. I think it could be expanded if we see good use, or if we feel that there are a lot of applicants driving in other areas as well. I don't think we're not going to promote it that this is the only place that you can get it, but certainly if something makes sense, we're going to honor it, and we'll bring it to the Loan Fund Committee as well as probably in front of you all here to make that decision. So I think it was just really setting a boundary to start, and we can always expand from there.
So you wouldn't turn, like you said, it's Tasty Freeze, so you wouldn't turn from it down?
Well, I think, you know, I don't want to say we'll turn down, or we won't turn down every one, or we will accept everyone. I think it's just a matter of a case-by-case scenario. Instead of saying it that way, it's really just kind of giving, again, that flexibility. If it makes sense, if it's a quality project, you know, like Tasty Freeze, or right on the edge of it, instead of saying, well, we're going to honor everything except for, you know, we'll expand 2 blocks out from the Renaissance zone. This kind of gives us a little bit more broader language to incorporate other projects that may come up that we're not in the know of right now, or maybe that's the ticket that they need to make the project feasible too. But typically, we're trying to get those older areas, those older established, which is the majority of the Renaissance zone that we have right now.
I was also thinking farther out south, because we're like Safari, and, you know, that area also has older buildings.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you at all. I think we can look into it. I think it's just a matter of the use of the funds, putting the cap on it initially. I think we could establish maybe other funds that could go towards that, or maybe even creating different incentives to help with those troubled areas too. So I think everything's on the table at this point. If people were interested, I think the best point of advice right now is just to reach out and we'll explore it and we'll get the information in place to make sure that we hear their application and we're truthful through the process.
Councilmember White?
I'll add, I think one thing when we talked about this in EDA, it was that this might help in terms of some of the marketing of it, because we had it citywide and nobody was applying for it. But if we narrow the boundaries, rather than casting such a wide net and waiting for them to come to you, you'll be able to do more outreach. And so maybe even some one-on-one meetings, going to some of those businesses in that area and letting them know about the program and encouraging them, whereas it would be unrealistic for you to be able to do that same kind of outreach on a larger scale at this point.
I think too, if I may add, and that's a great point, I think it's really, you're concentrated in an area of with the amount of money that's put in place too, of where you could see some transformation very quickly with some small investment truly. When you start kind of opening up maybe to a bigger area, you could just see bits and pieces here, but you really don't see the full outcome of it. Again, not to say that we wouldn't honor something else, but you could see a big impact from a $200,000 cap in a Renaissance zone area or a downtown environment too.
Councilmember Hendrickson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank you, Derek. I forgot to thank Dan Molly and Chris Volkers and Amy Thorpe for the good work in this, and I'd make a motion to approve this.
Second.
So motion, forgive me, sure my mic was on. So there's a motion on the table to approve the resolution, to approve the modifications to the Moorhead Storefront Rehab Program. That's been made by Councilmember Hendrickson, seconded by Councilmember White. All in favor of said motion, please signify by.
Can we
Councilmember
change, instead of, so you could make it so others can apply for that? I hate that, excluding other. Can we change the wording on that?
We'll have,
does.
there will be language as a part of the policy that will be similar that what you'd find in our Renaissance zone policy right now, as well as our commercial industrial. We've taken language that we've had approved through the city attorney's office that gives the council as well as city leadership the flexibility to hear those items too, so that we have protection in place there already.
Does that change? Okay. In the motion, we're still good, and second, still good? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. LaPointe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members.
Okay, and so we move down to agenda item number 15, pulled off consent. This is regarding a resolution to enter into an agreement for financial support for Valley Water Rescue. Madam City Manager.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, City Council, this was pulled off consent. I think there's some questions, so we'll get to that. I just want to introduce the item, and then we'll get to the questions. And we do have the Chief of Police and Fire Chief here to answer the questions. This is a partnership agreement. We've been working with the local partners. Cass County is taking the lead on this. We've asked for some additional language in the agreement, and that's what started this whole process about a year and a half ago. We asked for some, like, define what we're supposed to be doing, define who's on the board, that kind of thing. They've done a lot of work on this agreement. It's really good now. We're all in agreement. And they did make the changes that we in the City of Moorhead requested. All the other entities agreed to that language. So we're ready to go forward with it. And I'll let the chiefs explain what it is and what we do. And then there were some questions about it. So if that's okay, we could have the chiefs explain.
No problem. For the people at home, Chief Shannon Monroe, Chief Richard Dyson, or Rich.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This agreement has been in existence since prior to me starting here with the City of Moorhead, and it provides a service to us that we would not be able to do on our own due to the level of training, the amount of expensive equipment, and then the, I guess, relatively limited amount of times that it gets used. So when this nonprofit group formed, they actually are reserve deputies with the Cass County Sheriff's Department. And that's how they formed and became part of the Sheriff's Department over there, but they serve the entire Cass and Clay County communities. So when they come over to the Minnesota side, obviously North Dakota authorities won't extend to a nonprofit group of volunteers insurance benefits if there was somebody that got injured or something like that. So Clay County then picks up workers' compensation and liability insurance for any of their operations that they're doing over here. It's kind of a strange arrangement. I understand that, but there's a few different things in place that caused it to go that direction. When it comes to, say, drowning deaths that occur in Clay County, the Sheriff's Department is responsible for reporting those incidents to the state of Minnesota. But then I'm sure the next question can be is why is the city of Moorhead contributing instead of just Clay County for all of Clay County? Because of the high population that we have here, typically we are the ones that use the services the most. And it's not just in like the freshwater drownings in the river or that sort of thing that we have here. We often have stolen cars that get put into the river. When we've had major investigations involving firearms or other weapons, they go into the river if we get information that an item has been tossed into the river, and they do searches. And again, the high level of training and equipment that they have for going into that water, whether it's ice on top of it or not, they go down in there and search on a grid, inch by inch, feeling by hand, while attached to a line, because they can't literally see their hand in front of their face. So they can't even tell what is up and what is down. But they can map out exactly the area that they covered, and obviously doing it with the dangers of the current, the temperature, and possibility of getting caught up in snags of tree branches and that sort of thing underneath the surface. So roughly they've got 11 trained divers, 8 support staff. They also have 3 canines. They do searches for missing people. They have trained like bloodhounds, as well as some other German Shepherd type animals. They don't do apprehensions, that's police dog work, but they do searches. And then they also have a sonar team with some of the new equipment that they've obtained to help them be able to see the bottom of the river when they're out doing searches. So I hope that kind of covers the what the functions of the team are and how they're made up. But the primary thing is that these are all volunteers. They are not employed by Cass County, by Clay County, by the city of Moorhead. They're a volunteer organization who devotes a lot of time and effort into being a very, very good team.
Is there any questions for Chief Monroe or Chief Dyson? Did you want to be heard on anything?
He covered it.
Okay. All right. Well, this matter was pulled off consent, so if there's any questions, let's address them now while we are here. Councilmember Dahlquist.
Yeah, I was the one that had the questions. It was because it said Cass County personnel, and then it said Clay County workmen's compensation. And so that's why I was concerned. I mean, no, I'm all for supporting the water rescue, and that was just my concern, that legally, how does that work? But you covered that too. So,
Okay.
of course, I would very happily say we should support you. Thank you.
City Attorney Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To address the question of liability, I had a long conversation and drafting session with the Cass County State's Attorney regarding the issue. And what happens, as with our mutual aid agreements, is the requesting party. So if Clay County or Moorhead is the requesting party, asks for a rescue that occurs in Clay County or Moorhead, the requesting party's workers' compensation and insurance applies. So if we bring over Cass County employees, our compensation and our workers' comp applies. And similarly, if we go across the river and assist with their efforts, then their workers' compensation and their insurance applies. It's very standard, and that's how it works in all of our mutual aid agreements, including the different fire departments. We have mutual aid agreements between police departments, between the fire departments, and I think also SWAT is a collaborative effort because it helps to bring all the different resources together, because one community alone can't sustain a water rescue team.
Thank you for that clarification. I think it's important for, my mic is on, people to understand when we start talking about not only locally, but thinking regionally, there is going to be a heightened investment. Now, obviously, there's some intricate legal language that'll go into incorporating these agreements that we have to obviously take into consideration. So that's just for us to think about here on the council, also people at home as well, that, I mean, when we start getting bigger population, services are required, we have to invest. And that's just kind of the reality of living in this region. So are there any other questions or comments for either one of the chiefs? Thank you for your information. Thank you, City Attorney Shockley. Moving forward, is there a resolution? Anyone have any questions, thoughts? Okay. Is there a resolution or a motion to approve the resolution to enter into the agreement for financial support for Valley Water Rescue? Moved by Councilmember Dahlquist, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you again. We'll move to agenda item number 16, mayor and council reports. Anyone from the council wish to report? Councilmember White.
I have two things I want to share. One, I wanted to take a minute to thank the Moorhead Business Association for hosting a great 4th of July, or for planning the 4th of July, implementing it, and also MSUM for hosting it. And mention, yesterday I was walking down a street in Annapolis, Maryland, and happened to hear a conversation where some people said, I just heard the words Minnesota State University Moorhead. And it was actually a Maryland family who came to North Dakota last week because they're trying to cover all 40 states. And or all 50 states, sorry, all 50 states. North Dakota was number 40 for them, and they were encouraged to come over to Moorhead, and they loved it. They came over here for our 4th of July, and they just thought we were a wonderful city, and so it was so great to be, halfway across the country and hear great things about our community. And the other thing I wanted to share is, several of us were at the League of Minnesota Cities annual meeting, and it was a great experience, lots of really valuable information. And I know several of us were really excited by one of the keynote speakers, Dave Meslin, who kind of spoke to some of the things that we've been talking about, of looking at ways of increasing community engagement in our local government. And I think that, he had a great way of showing some of the things that you might take for granted. We sort of assume that, when you're involved with local government, you assume that people know how to find the agenda for the meeting, how to come and speak at a council meeting and all of those things. And we take those things for granted and don't realize that it's not as simple as that for everybody, that it can seem kind of threatening or scary or intimidating, or sometimes they just don't know where to get the information. And so after listening to his presentation, it gave me the idea, and I wanted to request that the mayor form a work group so that a few of us could get together and gather some input from the community and find out ways that we can increase community engagement. And in fact, one of the things that we talked about is doing an open house, and we could do one night where we invite the public to come in and do like a mock council meeting and show them this is how it goes, and this is how you would, if you wanted to speak at a meeting, this is how you would do it, and kind of demystify the process. But we could look at other things too. It's just finding ways of just making people feel more comfortable and more, more engaged with what we're doing here in the city, so that they really can have their voices heard. So that's my request, and is that at some point that the mayor would form a work group to explore that, and then we could come back with recommendations to the council to consider in the future.
Any comments or thoughts, questions regarding Councilmember White's reports? Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember White. I was also in attendance, and not only council members, but staff, I think, were really energized by some of the ideas. So I think it's I'm fully supportive of engaging our staff, elected officials, and most importantly, actually saying what are people interested in. Is we might be kind of policy geeks up here, knowing what people would actually want to come and participate would be really critical for it being a successful activity. So I would encourage that appointment.
Any other thoughts, comments? Councilmember Watson Curry.
Just a reminder, seeing the poster on the way in, and our neighborhood had an ice cream social recently, is it's Night to Unite. Sign up is open. And I want to encourage folks to sign up. It's on the city webpage. If you simply do a Google search for Night to Unite and City of Moorhead, you'll find it. So there's some great tips and information if you've not previously had a block party. And it's a great opportunity for community engagement for our council and city staff as well. If you register before July 19th, the little incentive is you'll be entered in a chance to win a $100 gift certificate that you can use towards the supplies for your party. So encourage folks to get registered as soon as possible and start reaching out to their neighbors. So strong neighborhoods translates to a safer community. So have some fun.
Thank you for your report. Any thoughts or any other reports or comments? Okay. I guess I'll just piggyback on the fact that we had a lot of our council and our staff attend the League of Minnesota Cities annual conference. I found it to be very rewarding and a great investment of our time and resources. I think a lot of what Mr. LaPointe talked about, and I think, and what the Chief Monroe had stated, I think there's a lot that we have to dialogue about as a city because of the fact that, we are 3.5 hours away from our capital. And so the dynamics that take place in St. Paul, what decisions are made, do affect us up here. But also, I think it's also prudent to understand that we're right next door to another state where there are economic giants right next door. So our culture and the things that we do up here, we have to take into consideration when, as there are laws that are passed in St. Paul that indirectly or directly affect us up here. So I think one of the best things I got out of going to the conference was I met with some other Minnesota mayors. And from across, obviously, the state as far as north as Idaho Falls, down south as Austin. And, we find out that our communities are similar in a lot of the challenges and some of the positives that we are working with. So I think all in all, I thought that it was a great conference. It was good to see and brainstorm with other mayors, throwing some of the ideas that are happening in their communities and what we're doing here, to say that we're all pretty much on the same page about what we're trying to do as far as economic development and working within the dynamics within our own local communities. So I appreciate City Manager Volkers getting us all up there and getting council and staff together to, kind of rejuvenate and get some new ideas and bring some fresh ideas back to our community. So, thank you. That's probably my highlight. Does anyone have anything else to add? Councilmember White.
While we're at it, we should also mention that we received an award and for our green space, right? And Green Steps, I'm sorry. See, and part of why I wanted to mention it is because those of us that were there got to be in a photo, but some of the people who really were the workhorses behind it weren't there, and I think that we should give credit where credit is due. And so for Dan Molly and for Steve Moore and some of our other great staff who have really put in all the effort in terms of reducing our carbon footprint, making Moorhead a more eco-friendly community. We really appreciate that, and it's been recognized in the state.
I second that. Any other comments, questions, reports for the good of the order? Then I will pass it on to City Manager Volker.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Councilmember White. Thank you for acknowledging the Green Steps and the staff work on it, especially Dan Molly. He really was a driving force behind it. And so it's unfortunate he was couldn't be there, but he was on vacation having a good time. So that's good. But we'll get him the blocks and we'll proudly display it right outside his office for the whole city. So Dan can be proud of it. Thank you, Dan. I have two other things. I want to give a shout out to our city prosecution office. They have been working since, as you know, the end of the year, beginning of January. And I think Cheryl Dyson is here, our chief prosecutor. And they just had their first meeting. We have a cooperative agreement between all the cities in Clay County who are on this, sans Hawley, because Hawley went with the county attorney. But the rest of the cities are part of this new prosecution agreement in office. We had our first board meeting, and I think our chief chaired the board meeting. And what they did is all the cities got together and per the agreement and gave feedback on how the communication's going and how the service is going, which are the two things we were really trying to focus on. And they had nothing but, I was not there, but I'm told they had nothing but great things to say, compliments, and a lot of energy around the city prosecutor's office is working so well in Moorhead, and a lot of appreciation for Moorhead on taking that lead. And a lot of it, all of it, is due to the office's 5 employees with Cheryl as a lead. So thank you, Cheryl. Great job. The last thing I want to remind everybody of is the staff picnic is on Wednesday at 11:30 to 1:30, and you all are coming, I hope. And we are serving hot dogs and hamburgers and veggie burgers and a salad, and we have Dairy Queen dilly bars in a freezer there, so we're all set. Our local Dairy Queen is we're paying for them, but they're going to bring them over, and we have a little treat for all the employees as well, little gift and appreciation for all the work that they do for the city of Moorhead, which is why we're having the staff picnic on Wednesday. So just trying to, hopefully it won't rain. So thanks. That's my report.
I will put out there, before I forget, I will be on vacation during the night to unite. So I'm going to apologize in advance. I haven't seen my mom in about 2 years, so I probably need to go home and see her. So my apologies. If anyone forming your block parties, if there's some way I can make it up to you, I will, but I'll probably be gone on that or during that week for an extended vacation. My apologies in advance. So that's all I got. Anything else for your report, Madam City Manager? Okay. Then moving on to agenda item number 18, executive session. And the executive session is in regards to an executive closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05, subdivision 3B, paren 3, for the purpose of discussing the sale of real property described as Clay County parcel number 58.520.4110, owned by the city of Moorhead, and also another executive closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05, subdivision 3, to discuss sale of Clay County parcel number 58.980.1701, also known as the former American Legion building property. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Moved by Councilmember Watson Curry, seconded by Councilmember Carlson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. We are in executive session. I think I slipped on that. It's probably my bad. I usually have dibs or something. I don't know where they went. You know what? Honestly, somebody did take my Werthers. They're practically gone.
He doesn't just go down the road, you know, he has to go overseas.
any dessert? Okay, all right.
That would be very fun. Yeah. I probably would never take home a paycheck. No, that's not what I work for. See you later. Have a good evening. What happened to Chuck?
Yeah, Andy, we're gonna be a little while, so you'll hang.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
I got like, I learned how to play roadblocks. I know what kind of like what Liberty Do is. I know Max during 4 Liberty Do's on July 4th.
Yeah. No, they just like
We're good. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Like this way? What a trooper. Your son's gonna want to be a city councilman. Exactly. Hey, seeing you in action.
Thursday. Or Thursday.
Pretty much.
I could do it. Yep, 3 works perfect for me. 3 is perfect, yes, I absolutely will.
My check was different. Is it a building or public?
Well, that's fine. I didn't catch all.
Well, I underlined mine.
Did you?
Yeah, there's one copy.
No, it's not even for.
Again,
No, last week? Oh, happy birthday. Let's say this Thursday. Missed it. Just said this Thursday.
I wanna,
Nobody wants to do that, so.
Yeah.
just, it's like,
No, never.
stop trying to invest in business.
I need some money. Yeah, yeah. No kidding, I was gonna say why not? Well, you said just go. Yeah, go to junkyard.
He's gonna go junkyard?
They have games. You're like, okay. Play checkers? Yeah, right. How does that work? How did that work? No, it was, when you said, I'm like.
Oh, it's almost dead.
Let alone here. Yeah, that's, yeah. Okay, so Thursday at 3. That's a Liberty Do.
Oh, I got news for you. Your mom knows everything.
What's a Liberty Do? And do we need
It's Mom Doodle. It's blue tinted and it's oh, really?
It's not blue tinted.
Is that really what it is?
Because I can't go out there and teach you anything.
Did you? Okay.
Did you not go to sleep until this?
No, I actually.
Yeah.
And I have to talk to you about the Oakport.
What, are we getting in trouble by Oakport? They want us to see who
No,
wins?
it's
Number 2. Oh. That's fine. Kegger, anyone, or are we going home?
Junkyard.
If we're not, I'm gonna go for a run.
Junkyard.
Well, I'm invited this time. People ignored. I think it was some damn discriminate. Oh wait, am I back on? Are we're not taping.
Wait
are
a
we?
second.